In this particular project, we'll be building a BMI calculator that is going to help a user to calculate their body mass index. This application is built with the help of React, which is one of the most popular and powerful JS frameworks. Now, in this particular project, you'll be learning about React hooks, about state management, and about the good practices when trying to develop any sorts of application. Now, let's take a look at the app that we're building. So this is the React app that we're building. It is a body mass index calculator. As you might be able to see that we can calculate a body mass index. One might be able to select the height through help of this range slider. Now we are using the library React range slider to get this, and we can also enter the data manually. So for example, if I just want my height to be 182 centimeters and my weight to be around 51 kilograms, and I just try to calculate my body mass index. So this is my BMI that says that I'm 15.4, and a text or a kind of motivational text for someone who is having a good BMI. For example, you are pretty slonky, have a Kit Kat, and if this happens that my weight is more than, so we have a different text now, as well as we have a different BMI. And if I just click on clear, then you might be able to see that everything is resetted. And here is some data about the body mass index. It says that body mass index, abbreviated BMI, is the key index for relating weight to height. And certain other data. Overweight is a BMI of 25 to 29.9. Obesity is a BMI of 30 or more. So this is the application that we're building.
So now we'll be starting up with our React application, and thanks to Facebook's Create React App utility, it's fairly simple to do so. All you need to do is that you need to run these 3 commands and your app is up and ready to go. The CI utility does save us a lot of work. It comes with Babel and React DOM pre-installed into our application, so it does save us a lot of time. Now before we start creating a React application, there are certain prerequisites, and that is you need to have Node installed on your systems, which I'm going to presume that you already have, but if you just don't, then download it from the official website, the long-term support version. And to find out which version of Node you're on, just open up a command prompt or Windows or terminal and run the command node with -v, and they should tell you your Node version. I am on version 16.13.1. Download it from the official website, and it's fairly simple to do so. You can just download it from here. Therefore, I'm not going to show you how to download and install Node.js. Now, apart from Node, we'll also be needing code editor. I'm going to use VS Studio Code for the purpose of this project. Feel free to use any other code editor, but I'm going to recommend you that you should use VS Code because it comes with a lot of features that might help you during a development process. But if you have some personal preference like Atom or maybe Sublime, then just feel free to use them. At the end of the day, we just need a code editor. Now to create up a React application, open up a command prompt. So now let's create a React application, and to do that, just run the command npx create React app followed by the name of the app, and the name of our app is BMI React. That means body mass index calculator of React. Now hit enter, and it is going to take some amount of time to create your React app, and by that time you'll have to wait. Alright, so we have successfully created our BMI React now. Now to open up a VS Code instance of application, just move into directory of BMI React. That means we'll be changing our directories to be BMI React. Alright, so now I'm inside my app directory. Now to open up a VS Code instance of this particular application, just run the command code with a period. If you are having Visual Studio Code installed, then only this is going to work. Otherwise, if you're having Atom, then you'll have to run Atom with a period. But since I'm having Visual Studio Code, I'll just run code with a period. Alright. So alright, now we are inside of our VS Code instance of our application. That now inside this we are having these node modules. Apart from node modules, we are having certain other folders like the public folder and the source directory. And apart from them, we are having this gitignore, package.json and package.log.json. So now what these folders are. So when talking about node modules, this is going to contain all the packages that we are going to install into our systems. As you might see that there are certain packages with the name Babel and all. So what these packages are, if I just move into my package.json file, you might see that there are modules or packages such as React, React DOM, and React scripts. So all these all these are node packages. Now apart from these node packages, we are having this public folder. Inside this we are having this favicon.ico and index.html and logo png and certain other files. And our main area of interest lies in our source directory. So now before we actually touch any of these files, let's give it our first run. So open up your inbuilt terminal, and to do that you just have to move into this terminal and click on create new terminal, or alternatively you can press this shortcut as you might see on the screens. Now apart from this, so let's just first give our application our first run. So for that purpose, just move into your terminal and just run the command npm start. So now we see our application is up and running on localhost 3000, and a browser with this URL must have loaded on your browser. So if I just move into my browser, so this is what the CRE utility gives us, a spinning React logo with two text that says that to make any changes, you have to edit in the app.jss file. So just move into your app directory, and the first thing that we're going to do is that we'll be closing this off, and inside the source directory, we'll be moving into our app.js file, and we'll be changing the text inside here. So just move into this and remove this entire header segment over here, and instead we'll be having an h1 tag. So let's create an h1 tag, and inside this h1 tag we'll be having our all right, so let's make it working. So working. All right, now hit save, and let's take a look into our application. So now we can see that our text has been replaced. Now we are having this working instead of the spinning React logo and all that other stuff. So now we have made changes into our application. Now if I just move back, and inside the source directory we are having this app.css file. We are having this app.js file, as well as app.test.js and index.css. And these extensions are more than self-explanatory what they do. They're having CSS, and all that CSS that you saw before was applied through these files. There are quite a many ways to apply CSS into our application. We can use the CSS framework. We can write our own CSS. We can use Sass, or we can use the inline styling. There are many ways to write CSS into a React application, and we are having this logo.svg and certain other files. So now let's first get rid of the files that we do not need. We do not need this app.test.js, so let's get rid of this. As well as this logo.svg. All right, so now let's take a look into our public folder. Inside this public folder, we are having this index.html. Now inside this index.html, when you're going to move in here, you'll be seeing certain meta tags and a bunch of link tags. All right, so if I just move down, here you might see this is the title of the application is React app. All right, so now let's start creating our application that we need. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's get rid of these. That's our app.logo and CSS. No, perhaps we want CSS. Let's just get rid of this logo. All right, so now we'll be importing the libraries or the hooks that we need from React. So let's import React from React. All right, so now apart from this React, we'll also be needing the useState hook. So let's import it as well. So all right, now we are having these two hooks. That is our useState hook. So now after this, what we're going to do is that we'll be importing certain libraries that we'll be installing. Now there are certain libraries that I'd like you to install. So just open up your terminal and install the library that is React Range Slider. This library is going to enable us to create a slider inside of our application that you saw back then. So that's what you're going to do. So we'll be installing a library with the name React Slider. So just run the command npm install React Range Slider, and this should install your library inside of application. All right, so now it's going to be installed in a while, but let's import it. So we'll be importing our slider from our React Range Slider. All right, so now we are importing these sliders, Now the first thing that we're going to do is that we'll be creating up state inside of our application, and we'll be having state for different things. First, we'll be having a state for that is going to be for our height. Next, we'll be having a state for our weight, and apart from this, we'll also be having a state for our height error. So let's name it height error. And after this, we'll also be having a state for our weight error. So weight error. Now after this, we'll be also having a state for our BMI value, that means body mass index value. So BMI value, and after this BMI value, we'll also be having a state for our BMI text. So BMI text, and we'll be also having a state for our text. So text, and that's pretty much all the state that we need. So let's create this. So for this height, it's going to be let height, and the setup function for this, that's going to be equal to set height and initial value for our height. So useState. Alright, so an initial value, we are going to give this as an empty string. So this is our first state. Now after this, let's create the same thing for our weight. So weight, as well as setup function for this, that's going to be equal to set weight, and this too is going to have an initial value that we are going to put equal to, so useState as an empty string. All right, now after this, we'll be having a state for our height error. Okay, so let's create a state for our height error now. And a setup function for this, that's going to be equal to set height error. Alright, this is going to be equal to useState, and this too is going to be equal to an empty string. Now we are going to have this for weight error, so let's just copy this state over here and paste it. Alright, now we'll be having weight error, so let's just copy this text. Alright, so what you just saw now is what we call to as multicast editing, and to do this, just select the text that you want to select again, or the similar text that you want to edit, and just keep on pressing Ctrl plus D until and unless you reach the amount of text that you want to edit. So since I just want to edit these two texts, therefore I'll just press it twice, and after this I'll just make sure that it's weight, as well as I'll just make it uppercase W. Alright, and after this, to leave the multicast editing, you just have to press escape and you're out of it. So this is our height as well as our weight error. Now after these two states, we'll be also having a state that's going to be responsible for a BMI value. So let BMI value and set BMI value, and this is going to be equal to useState and an empty string. Alright, now after this, we'll be having another state for our BMI text. So let's create another state for our BMI text, and a setup function, set BMI text, that's going to be equal to useState Alright, now this is our BMI text. Now the last piece of state is going to be for our text, so that's what you're going to do. So let text and set text, useState. This too is going to hold up empty string. Alright, so this is all the state that we need inside of our application. Now let's head to the return and start creating the structure of our application. Alright, so before we do any other thing, let's just give it our first run. So to create or run our application or start a server, you just need to open up a terminal and thankfully VS Code does have a inbuilt terminal. So just create a new terminal, and this is going to create a new terminal for you. So all right, before we move any further and launch our application, there are a few extensions that I'd like you to install because these extensions are a lot helpful because they makes our development process easy. So to install this particular extension inside of your VS Code, and if you don't have them, then just head to your marketplace that is right over here. As you might see, that a kind of Rubik's cube shape in which one cube is actually detached from the whole cube. Just head over there. That's the marketplace. Alright, so here we like to install certain extensions inside of our application, and that are namely auto close. So just search for auto close and head to this auto close segment. So now what this auto close does, the name is more than self-explanatory. It is going to make sure that every element that you create has a closing tag. It is really helpful, believe me. After this, we will be also installing this auto rename tag. So what this rename tag does is that, for example, if you decided that you need a h1 component, and for some reason at certain other point of time you decide no, this need not to be an h1, it needs to be an h3. So when you rename the first component, that is the h1 to h3, the closing element is, or the corresponding closing tag is also going to be renamed as h3. So these are the two helpful components that you can have inside of your arsenal if you wish. So alright, after the auto rename and auto close tag, I'd like you to have this extension inside of your VS Code, and that is your bracket pair colorizer. So just search for bracket pair colorizer, and you should just head to the second version of this. Okay, so just install this inside of a VS Code. It colorizes your bracket. Now after this, also install this npm. Just search for npm and install the verified versions of npm that are namely your npm that suppose your npm packages as well as your npm IntelliSense. So if you just head into npm, you might see it says it all. It says that this extension supports running npm scripts such as npm start and npm run build, defined in the package.json file, and validating the installed modules against the dependencies defined in the package.json. Alright, so after this, I'd like you to also install this npm IntelliSense as a package inside of the application. So this helps us in autocomplete. And after this, there's this third package or the fourth package, I don't know which I'm on. This package that is ES7. So just search for ES7. React Redux and React Native snippets. So they create the boilerplate for our components that are really good. So I like you to install them as well. And then this last one, and that is Prettier. So Prettier is basically a code formatter that's going to help you to format your code. So you do not need to actually worry about indentation and all. So just install this as well. So these are all the packages that I like you to have inside of the application. Now why don't we actually give this our first run? So just open up your terminal and run the script command that says npm start. Now if you head over to your package.json file, you might see and scroll down. So here are a few script commands that says start, build, test, and eject. So start command is used to start a development server. You'll use the build command when you need to create a build directory, because as of now you might see that there is no such build directory over here. This is for development purposes. Alright, so now let's give it a first run. So just run the command inside of your inbuilt terminal npm start. So now let's create the structure of our application, and to do that, let's get rid of this div, or perhaps just give this an ID instead of a class name that's going to be equal to container. Alright, now inside this div we'll be having another div with the ID title. So let's create another div, and this is going to have the ID that's going to be equal to title. Now let's close this. All right. Now inside this div of id title, we'll just be creating a h1 tag, and this tag is going to hold the text that states that calculate your body mass index. So let's create a h1, and this is going to have the text calculate your body index, body mass. So calculate um, all right, so this is our h1 text. Now after this we'll be having a form, so let's create that form. So come out of this div and create a form element. So inside this form we'll be having a div of class name unit. So let's create a div of class name unit. Inside this we'll be having a paragraph element. So let's create that paragraph element now. And inside this paragraph element we'll be having the text that specifies the height. So height 95 centimeters. Up to 220 centimeters. Alright, this is a paragraph tag. Now let's get out of this particular div and create an input field, and this input. Alright, so this is an input field that's going to contain a type that's going to be equal to submit. So this input field is going to be self-closing input, so let's make it one. And inside this we'll be having certain properties. One of them is type, that's obviously submit. And after this type submit, we'll also give them name. So name, this is going to be equal to height. And after this height, we'll be adding a step. So this step is going to be equal to 1. And after this step, give this a placeholder. This placeholder is going to be equal to centimeters. So centimeters. And after this placeholder, give this a min height. For now, let's just put it equal to 0. An empty string. Alright, leave it like that for now. And after that, what we're going to do is that we'll make sure that it also has a max height. Keep this as well equal to an empty string for now, and a value. We'll be replacing them with dynamic properties, but now just keep them as empty strings. Now value and an onChange property. OnChange. Okay, so this is going to be equal to let's just comment this one out. And after this, another property that will be onKeyPress. OnKeyPress. All right, so we'll be adding these properties in a short while, but for now, let's just leave it like that. All right, so this is our input field for our height. Now after this, let's create another div. So we'll head out of this particular input, and just outside this, we'll be creating up an input or a div. So let's first create a div, and this div is going to have a class name that's going to be equal to error. And this error is, let's close this div. Okay, it has been closed. Okay, so now leave this div like that only, and after this we'll be selecting the slider. So if you remember that we imported this particular slider right up here over here, so that's what we're going to import over here. Alright, so let's add the slider. That's going to add a slider into our application, and this slider too is going to have some properties, and this is going to be a self-closing component. Alright, so now leave this slider as it is, and after this what we're going to do is that we'll be coming out of this particular div. Alright, so we haven't created any div, so let's wrap this slider alongside a div. So div of class name, that's going to be equal to slider, and let's make sure that this slider is inside of this div. So let's just take it over there. Alright, So now this is our slider that's inside of this particular div of class name slider. So let's head out of this div and create a break tag. All right, so here's the break tag. And we'll be creating another div of class name. This is going to be equal to units. All right. Now this div is going to hold the paragraph tag. This paragraph tag is going to specify the weight. All right, so this is supposed to be okay. So weight, and this is going to vary from 10 kilograms to 300 kilograms. 300 kilograms. All right. Let's get out of this particular div. Here it is. And now we'll also be creating an input. So let's create an input again. Now this input is going to have a type. So why don't we actually just copy all the properties over here, because the properties are going to be similar. So let's copy that entire properties and come over here and paste it again. Alright, so as you might see that it is also having a type of submit, but this type is supposed to be number. Alright, so what's above? Okay, so we did a mistake. It is also supposed to be a number, not a submit. And we are having a name of height. We need to put it equal to weight and a step of 0.5. And this is supposed to have a placeholder not in centimeters, rather in kg or kilogram, and a min height, a max. Alright, and a value property, and on change and on key press. Alright, so now we are good with this. Now this is also going to have a div of class name error. So let's put this equal to error and leave it empty like that. And after this, again we'll be creating a slider. So let's now again create a slider and close it. This too is supposed to be inside of a div of class name slider, so let's do that. So div of class name, that's going to be equal to slider. Alright, and now let's place this slider inside this. Alright, so now we are good with this. And after that slider has come into existence, what we're going to do is that let's just scroll down a little bit. And add a break tag. Alright, so now after this we'll be creating a div with the id button containers. So create a div of class name, that's going to be not a class name but an id instead. Id, that's going to be equal to button containers. So buttons container. Alright, so right inside this div we'll be having a button now. Now this button is going to have the text calculate. So let's create a button of holding the text calculate. Alright, now after this button will be adding properties as well as certain class names. So first let's add it, give it a class name that's going to be equal to button. So we have given it a class name of button, and it's having the property, it's having the text that says that calculate. Now let's come right beneath this button and create a break tag as well. So break, and inside this break we'll be having another button now. So this let's create another button. Now this button too, let's close this. This is going to hold the text clear, and this button is going to have a class name of button again. So now we are done with our form. Now let's come out of this form, and after this we'll be creating up a div again. So create another div, and this div, let's close this, and inside this div we'll be having another div of id result top text. So let's create another div of id that's going to be equal to result top text. Alright, so this is going to be a div. Now let's close this div. For some strange reason I seems to have two closing tag for one particular opening tag. I really don't know why, because maybe I'm having two auto close extensions. Alright, now after this div will be having a paragraph tag inside this. Now this paragraph is going to tell us our current BMI. So your current BMI, this is going to display our BMI value. So BMI value. Alright, so this is a BMI value now, and after this we'll be having our BMI text. So let's create that BMI text. So right beneath this we'll be having right beneath this paragraph we'll be having a BMI text. So let's get out of this div and create another div of id BMI text. So div of id that's going to be equal to BMI hyphen text. Alright, and this is going to hold up the value of BMI text. Alright, so this is our BMI. Now we'll be heading out of this div and creating some more fields. So now let's create another div, and this div is going to have a class name that's going to be equal to text. So this text, alright, now inside this div we'll be having another div of id text. So let's create another div, and this is going to have an id of text. Alright, now inside this div of id text we'll be having a certain value or certain text over here. So why don't we actually just put lorem ipsum for now. So inside this text, alright, so we are having this div with id text, and inside this we are having this text that says that body mass index abbreviated BMI is the key index of relating weight, and to break tags as well as certain other text. So this is a structure of our application. Now the next step is that we'll be creating up the methods that we need inside of our application, and after that supplying them. So that's what you're going to do next. So now we'll be creating some constants that we need inside of our application. For example, the min height, the maximum height, the minimum weight and maximum weight, and other stuff. So first let's do that. So we'll be creating a constant that is going to be equal to min height. This is going to be equal to 95. So put it equal to 95. Now apart from this, we'll also be creating another constant that is going to be equal to min weight. So perhaps let's first make a max height. This is going to be equal to 220. So make it 220. Alright, now after this another constant that's going to be min weight. So min weight, and this is going to be equal to 10, and max weight. So max weight, this is going to be equal to 300. Alright, so our min height, our max height, our min weight and max weight. After this we'll be creating up another constant that's going to be equal to slice 3. So constant slim, this is going to be equal to 18.5, and constant normal, normal, this is going to be equal to 24.9, and constant fat this is going to be equal to 29.9. All right, so these are the constants that we'll be needing inside of our application. So now let's create those particular method. So first one is going to be equal to for our handling changes. For example, if I like to handle changes of my height and weight, so let's first create a method that's going to be responsible for changing our height. So handle change height. This is going to take up an event. All right, and this is going to be an arrow function. Set height. Now inside this we'll be setting up our height. So e dot target dot value. All right, now we are having one method to handle our height changes. Now we need a similar kind of method to handle our weight changes. So const handle change, but this time we want it equal to weight. This too is also going to take up an event, so let's give this and pass this in an event, and inside this we'll be setting up our weight this time. So set weight, and inside this e dot target dot value. All right, so this is our methods for our handling changes in height as well as our weight. Now let's handle the changes of our slider. So for that purpose we'll be creating another constant. So let's create another constant, and this time the name is going to be handle height change height slider. All right, so this too is going to take up a value, so give this a value as well. Now inside this what we're going to do is that we'll be setting our height. So set height, and this is going to take the value. All right, so this is our height changer slider. Now let's just copy this slider and we'll be pasting it again. This other one is going to be for our weight, so just paste this, and this is going to be for our weight. So why don't we just copy this height over here and press Ctrl plus D again, so to select the same height and put it equal to weight. All right, now press escape to remove this. All right, so now we are having these four methods, one to handle change in heights when someone is entering a text, as well as a corresponding height slider changer that's going to make sure that the height is even set it up when we are passing the value via help of our slider, and same goes with our weight as well. So now after these four methods we'll be having the on key press method that's going to handle the on key press. So let's put it equal to, let's get another constant. So constant, and this is going to be equal to handle key press, and this is going to take up a source as well as an event. So give it a source as well as an event. Now we want to allow some characters, and for example from starting from 0 to 1 to 3 4 5 6 7 to up to 9, as well as a period. So let allowed, this is going to be holding up values of allowed characters. So a period of 0 1 2 3 4 and 5 4. All right, so these are all the allowable characters inside of that particular input. Now after this we'll also be putting it we'll also be creating a let that's going to be equal to current char, and this is going to take up the event key. So event dot key, and now let found, let's create a found, and this is going to be equal to false. All right, now after this we'll be creating a for loop. So for let I equal 0, I should be less than allowed characters length. So allowed chars dot length, and then after that I incremented. All right, now inside this what we're going to do is that if The current character is triple equals allowed character times that means on the ith index, if it's available in that particular allowed cache, then what we want to do is that then we want to put found equals true. All right, and if it is not found in that, that means if the user tries to enter something that isn't in the allowed characters, for example if they try to put up an asterisk or a hashtag, then if that means the found is going to be remained as false. If that's the case, then if this is false, then what we want is that then we want to make sure that event dot prevent default. So first let's make sure that it doesn't reloads, the browser page doesn't reload. So event dot prevent default. All right, and after this we just want to return. Now we also need to limit the number inputs in the height and weight. So for that purpose, what we're going to do is that we'll be creating up a let, and this is going to be equal to current value, value, and this is going to be equal to an empty string, and if source triple equals height, then the current value is going to be equal to pass int, and inside this pass it with height plus the current character. So height plus the current character, current char. All right, so this is going, a value is going to take up this value, and after this what we're going to do is that if the current value is greater than our max height, then what we want to do is that then event dot prevent default. And if that's not the case, then what we want to do is that then the current value is going to be equal to pass int, and inside this time we'll be passing it with the weight. So weight this time plus current char. And if the current value is greater than max weight, then we want to prevent the browser from reloading. So e.prevent default. All right, and if it happens that the current value happens to be 0, then also we want to prevent the browser from reloading. So event dot prevent default. So after handle key press method, we'll be creating another method that's going to be called as classify method. So this too is going to be another function. So let's create a const, and this const is going to have the name classify result, and this classifies result is going to take a parameter that's going to be result, and inside this, if the result is less than slim 3 that we have specified above, if this is the case, then what do you want is that, so what do we have actually named it over there. Let's just head up. All right, so slim. All right, so now we are good. That means if it's less than 18.5, then we want to return slim. And if after this, what we're going to do is that we'll be creating another if statement. So inside this if, we'll be checking whether or not the result is equals to the normal. So if result is less than equal to the normal 3, and if this is the case, then we want to return normal. The other person is normal BMI, and if that's also not the case, and if the person is less than fat 3, if the result is less than fat 3, then we want to return fat. And if none of them is the case, then we just want to return too fat. Return too fat. Alright, so this is a BMI result calculating method, and after this we'll be creating another method that's going to help us to validate what all the user is supposed to enter. So for that validation, we'll be creating another method. So let's create another constant, and this is going to be called as validate, and this validate2 is going to be an arrow function. And inside this, we'll make sure that we have set it up the height again equal to an empty string. So set height is again going to be equal to an empty string, and so such is the case with our weight. So set weight error, set height error, we want to set them to empty strings. Alright, so this is what we want to do. After this, we'll be creating up let height error. So height error a string that's going to be equal to an empty string, and this is going to be the same case with the weight one. So let's just copy this and paste it over here, and this time it's going to be for weight. Alright, so we are having this for height as well as for our weight. Now after this, let's create a if, and if not height, that means if height is not true, that means the user hasn't actually entered any sorts of height inside of the input field, neither has he or her touched the slider. Then we want to give them a message. For that purpose, let's put this height error string that's going to be equal to please enter some height. And if they have entered something, then we'll be putting up an else if, and height is less than the minimum height which we have specified, which in this case is 95 centimeters. Then we want to say to them, so if height is less than equal to minimum height that we have specified, so min height, then we want to tell them. So then the height error is going to be height error string is going to be equal to greater than 95 please, greater than 95 please. Alright, now if after this we'll be putting up another else if. So this is going to check for if they are entering height that's greater than the maximum height. So else if height is greater than equal to max height, if this is the case, then what do you want to specify the height error string as is equal to height error string. This is going to be equal to less than 220 please, less than 220 please. All right, After this, we'll be validating same for the weight. So let's validate for weight now. If weight is not true, then we want to set the weight string as, why don't we actually just copy this over here? So let's copy this entire statement and paste it over here. The only things which we'll have to change is the weight with the height. So let's select height everywhere. So select the height and keep on pressing Ctrl plus D to the point of time that we are able to select all these heights right inside this particular block. So height. All right, now we are supposed to enter them with weight again, height. Okay, so all right, now we are good with this, except the fact that we need to change this to uppercase W as well as this and uppercase W. All right, so it's weight str. Now we are all good with this. And after this, we'll be having another if statement that's going to check that if the height error string or the weight error string is having something, then we want to set the height error. So set height error as the height error string as well as the corresponding weight error as the weight error string. Alright, so now we are good with this. Now we are supplying it with all the data that this validation needs. And after this, we are going to return a false. So return false, and if return false, okay. Alright, and after this, just get out of this particular if and now return true. Return true. That means there is no such error existing. Alright, now we are good with this. We have created our validation as well. And after creating this validation, we'll be creating a method that's going to help us to calculate our BMI. So let's create another method that's going to help us to calculate our BMI. So another constant. Calculate BMI. This is going to take up a parameter that's going to be an event. And what this is going to do with this is that it is going to check if not validate. It means if there is no such error with validation, then we want to return. If validation is not true, then return. Otherwise, create a let. And this let is going to have the text of BMI, which is going to be equal to, so the normal formula of how we calculate BMI. So weight upon and we want it to be fixed around 1, so to fixed 1. Alright, so this is a formula to create a BMI or the body mass index, and we'll make sure that the chunks are null. So let chunks, this is going to be equal to null. And after this, we'll be creating up a switch that's going to have different cases. The case for slim, the normal, fat, and too fat. So let's create those switch cases. So we'll be creating up a switch, and this switch is going to be calling our calculate result, so or classify result. So classify result, and we'll be passing in the BMI over here. So pass in the BMI, and inside this switch what you're going to have is the case. So with the respect to what the BMI is, will be returned the cases, whether they are slim, normal, fat, or too fat. So if the case says that the person is slim, then what we want to do is that then we want this segment to hold the data. That's going to specify the data that we need, and there's going to be this other case that's going to specify that's going to be for normal. So case normal, and inside this is going to go the corresponding normal, and then there's going to be this case that's going to be for our fat, and after this the case that's going to be for our too fat. So these are all the cases. So let's first create the data for our slim. Okay, so why don't we, rather than having this chunks, let's just create another let, and this is going to be just the result string. So result string, this is going to be equal to an empty string. All right, now we're good. So after this, what we're going to do is that we'll be creating or assigning these result strings. So if the person is slim, then we want the results string to be equal to you are pretty slonky, you are pretty slonky, have a Kit Kat. Alright, this is going to be the result string, and as usual we are going to supply it with a break. So break. Alright, after this then is going to be the case for our normal, and in this case we want the result string that's going to be equal to you are okay for now, you are okay for now, and then there's going to be case for fat. So inside this fat we are going to have the result string. So the result string, this is going to be equal to you are getting kind of fat, you are getting kind of fat, as well as there's going to be result string for too fat. So result string, you are too fat, you are too fat. Alright, so I forgot to give them the break, so give them break as well, and after this give this a default case as well. So default, this is going to be nothing but an empty object. So this is our switch cases. So we are having these result strings that are going to be specified for us, and after this what we're going to do is that let's set the BMI text. So the BMI text is going to be equal to the result text, so pass it the result string, and after this we'll also be setting up the BMI value. So let's set the BMI value as well. So set BMI value, this is going to take up the BMI, so give it the BMI, and after this also set the text. So set text as invisible chunk. Alright, so we have almost created all the methods that we need inside of our application except for our clear button. So let's create a clear button as well. This is the last method that we'll be creating. So let's create this last method, that's our clear button. This is going to make sure that all the height, weight, as well as all your data has been resetted. So let's create another const, and this is going to be the clear button. This too is going to be an arrow function. And inside this we'll set the height as an empty string, set the weight as an empty string, as well as set the BMI value as an empty string, as well as we'll be setting the height error and the set weight error as, so set height error empty string, set weight error as an empty string, and set text as visible chunk. Alright, so we have successfully created all the methods that we need inside of our application. Now let's assign these particular methods inside of our application. So head to your return, and inside this, the first place is our input inside of our form. The first input that's responsible for our entering our height. So inside this, what we're going to do is that inside this min, supply it with the min height, which was initially nothing but an empty string. So min height, and supply the max with the max height. So we have created them inside of our application. So if I just head above, so here is our min height as well as our max height, as well as our min weight and max weight, and certain other values. Now inside this value, we are going to give this the value of our height. So give this value the value of the height. Now is the time that we are going to give the value to our on change as well as our on key press. So inside the on change, give this the handle height change method. So handle height change height. All right. Now on key press, what you're going to do is that we are going to bind this particular method with height. So handle key press, and we need to bind this. So bind this with the height. All right, so now we are good with this. Now after this, we'll be heading inside of our next div, that's our div of class name error, and inside this div we'll be passing it with the height error. All right, so this div is also having our height error. Now head inside of a slider, and this is going to take up some properties that we need to specify right over here that we have created above. So the slider is going to take up minimum height, so a min. This min is going to be equal to our minimum height, so min height, as well as the max height. So this max is going to take the max height. After this min and max, give this a step as well. So this step is going to be equal to 1. And after this step, a value. So this value is going to be equal to height. And after this value of height, give this a on change property as well. So on change, this on change is our handle height slider change. So inside of our weight input, and inside this weight input as well, give this minimum height or minimum weight in this case. So minimum weight as well as a maximum weight. So maximum weight, and a value that's going to be equal to the weight. All right, now after this on change property, this on change is going to be equal to handle weight change. So pass it with handle weight change, handle change weight. All right, as well as on key press, and inside this on key press again we are supposed to bind this. So handle key press dot bind this, but this is going to be binded with the weight. So this weight, all right, so now we are also good with this. Now inside this error, we are going to supply it with the weight error. So weight error. All right, so now let's head to our weight slider, and in this weight slider as well, we are going to give this with the similar properties. So inside this weight slider, the first is the minimum weight. So give this a min, this is going to be equal to minimum weight. min weight as well as a max. This is going to be equal to max weight. And after this minimum and maximum weight, give this a step. This time it's going to be equal to 0.5. So step uh, equal to 0.5. And after this step value, so this value is going to be equal to weight. And after this value of weight, give this on change as well. So on change, and this is going to be equal to handle change weight slider. So handle change weight slider. All right, so we are complete with this slider as well. Now is the turn for our button container, and inside this button container, as you might see, that we are having these two buttons, one to calculate and other to clear. So inside this button that is responsible for calculating, we'll be giving this an on click. So let's give this an on click, and this on click is going to be responsible to take our data, and we'll make sure that our browser doesn't reload. So event dot prevent default, and after this prevent default, we'll also make sure that we're calling our calc BMI. So calc BMI. All right. These two methods that are being called inside of this calculate, and after this the last button, that's a clear button. And as usual, inside this clear button, we'll just be passing this an on click with the clear method that we created up earlier. So on click, and this on click is going to be responsible to clear data. So clear. All right, so now we have created almost all the components or all the supply data with all the methods that we need inside of application. Now let's just head downwards and see if anything is missing. So we are supplying it with BMI text. So we have created applications